Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kay Jacobson. I'm a librarian at the Ramsey County Libraries, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this webinar on the Schools of Psychology, presented by J.B. Andersen. Today's program is brought to you through the cooperation of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at the University of Minnesota and the Ramsey County Libraries. We are grateful to each of these institutions for making this possible. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand things over to JB Andersen.
Good, thank you. I need to get set up here. So, let's see. There we go. I'm ready. Let me see. Yep, good. Well, today we're talking about archetypes. Am I ready to go? Yeah, okay, good. We're talking about archetypes, and this is going to be the introductory portion of it. Now, archetypes are they're difficult to limit, but Jung had 12 of them. Just as whoops, sorry. Oh, uh, good. Just as Sigmund Freud himself had 12 defense mechanisms. 12 is a big magic number in early civilizations. There's 12 in a dozen, there's 12 apostles, there's 12 imams, that's in the Muslim religion. And there's 12 they're just 12 is a big number, 12 apostles. It's a big number in the early history of our species. The reason is these early civilizations were looking at the skies and they saw objects and they named 66 different constellations. Now, as the sun travels across the sky, it passes through 12 of the 66 constellations. Hence, 12 became quite a magic number, and a lot of things were based on 12, including a lot of the British systems. We have Thomas Jefferson to thank for converting us to a 10 base system. Anyway, there's 12 as a kind of a side note. It's a magic number in early civilizations. So we're going to look at Jung's 12 archetypes. Archetypes are symbols. Symbols are found in all human cultures. Here in this top graphic is lots of different symbols, a triangle, a peace sign, etc. Religion, mythology, and societies all have symbols. So archetypes have been discussed for centuries, really, but Jung gave them this name of archetypes. They've been called a lot of different things. Plato called them ideas, and Immanuel Kant called them categories. He was a philosopher, as was Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher, called symbols in history as prototypes. Charles Darwin, the biologist, said they're social instincts. Henri Bergson, isomorphs. Noam Chomsky, a present-day philosopher and language, really more like a language expert, he called them language acquisition devices. He's interesting. He's been on TV occasionally, Noam Chomsky, but most recently has gained a lot of notoriety because he was connected with the Jeffrey Epstein parties. And Jan Piaget, who's a child psychologist or was, called them schemata. Uh, Humans know a lot at birth, according to Jung. This is a rejection of John Locke's idea of the tabula rasa. The tabula rasa it means in Latin, from Latin and English, blank slate. When you're born, you are a blank slate, an open book that hasn't been written in. Uh, Jung said, well, that's not true. We know a lot when we're born. Primordial images. Humans have them at birth. These are 8 primordial, age-old, and we're getting into the nature versus nurture argument. Everything is nature, according to John Locke, and everything is nurture, according to John Locke. Jung says, no, there's some nature stuff in there also. So let's take a look at archetype sets. There's Jung's classic set, and then there's a people set based on females. There's a people set based on males. There are events, there are figures, and there are motifs. These are other kinds of archetypes that people have set up. Jung's classic set includes complex extroversion, introversion, which is the same name as a couple of Sigmund Freud uh, uh, defense mechanisms. Then there's persona, shadow, ego, a personality type mentioned by Freud, and an archetype in Jung's list. The collective unconscious, there's a personal unconscious with Freud, where things we're unaware of about ourselves. Now, Jung introduces a collective unconscious, which we'll talk about, which is our group, our culture. Then there's anima and animus. If it ends in an A, it refers to women in a lot of these Latin phrases. If it ends in a U or S, it's men. So anima, animus. Then there's the self, individuation. You as an individual, not a part of society. And synchronicity, getting in touch with other things. Here's the people set female. There's an archetype for the mother, the maiden, someone unmarried, no sexual experience, and female, that's the maiden. The queen, a ruler. The huntress, someone able to work with men well, and so forth. The wise woman, the mystic, the lover, the huntress. A lot of people, the argument's been made that the reason men seem to be in charge and have all the weapons is because they're bigger and stronger and all that. Fact, according to many psychologists, is when women look at something, they see the whole thing. When men look at something, they see bits and pieces. Okay, let's talk about hunting. You need to see bits and pieces. Where's the animal in this group? That's why men are the hunters and women are not, according to many psychologists. Archetypes, the people set male. You got the king, the warrior, the men fight, although there are cultures where women fight. When the Spanish invaded the Incas, they noticed there were lots of women in the military forces there. The magician, this is a person of mystery, a person with a great deal of power. And then there's the lover, and those are the male archetype sets. Archetypal events, things that are of great significance in the life of a person, is their birth and their death. And separation from parents. You gain your own independence. You go out on your own. You are no longer part of your family of origin. Initiation. That takes place, you're going into a culture. What are the cultural standards? What are the cultural rules? And by the time you reach a certain age, you're a part of your culture. Excuse me. And that's known as initiation. Then there's marriage. You find a person that you love, you live together, and there's unifying opposites. There's this, and then there's that, and then there's this, and then there's that. So opposites are important. I always used to tell my students, anytime you hear me say something or quote from someone, think about what the opposite is. What's the opposite of statements in education? Archetypal figures. You've got the mother shown here at the top, feeding, nurturing, soothing. You got the father, stern, powerful, controlling, telling you what the rules are. Mother is holding you, talking to you, feeding you, etc. You have the maiden, that's purity, could be sisters. The child, birth, beginnings. What's your salvation in life? Then you got the devil, and you got God or gods. Most societies have had several gods. You got the wise old man, as in the graphic here at the bottom. Knowledge, guidance, telling you, what do we think about? What do we know? Uh, where are we headed, etc. And you've got the wise old woman and the trickster, somebody who's always talking to you about usually humorous things. Archetypal motifs. You got the apocalypse, the end of times. This is like Noah and the 40 days of rain, the deluge. And you've got the creation. Those are called motifs, have a strong religious connection. Archetypal animals, the faithful dog, loyal to you, following your commands, following you, etc. The enduring horse who never gives up. Let's keep going. We got 100 yards till we're home. And then the devious cat, which is self-serving. And there are a list of 325 archetypes. Now, we're only going to talk about the 12 that Jung created and was interested in. These 325 archetypes can be found at the site scottjeffrey.com, archetypes list, etc. You can just type in 325 archetypes or type in Scott Jeffrey, and you'll get to this list if you're interested in looking at it after we're done here. Jung's classic set, we're going to take a look at his 12. Number one is complex. And this is images that we have of our culture and in our culture. And they can vary from person to person, but generally they're something that is culturally across the board. Experiences that people have, and they can vary. And it's how people behave, what's acceptable, what isn't. How do you behave toward animals, toward people, towards females, toward males, etc. Toward food, for instance, even the images in your culture, and then the experiences you've had and how people behave, what's acceptable, what isn't, etc. Extroversion. This is your openness to others. How many people are in your circle of friends and pals and even larger groups than that? And um, do you tend to be more alone or more open toward others? But extroversion is about your openness to others. Introversion, these are reservations that you have. They're more like your closedness to others, you're about the self. Uh, and it's about reservations you have. How do other people see me? How do I see them? What's the best thing to do? Maybe I shouldn't get heavily involved in groups, but it's about contributing with others and the reservations you have about doing that. Item 4 is persona. That's about adaptation. And Jung talks about us having masks that we wear, things we don't show to other people, and changes we have in our personality. And sometimes we show them, sometimes we don't. So, persona, it's about you, how you're adapting to your culture, what kind of masks do you wear for different groups of people. Your new mask. Well, I typed in mask just to get some graphics about it. Here's what I got. Whole bunch of medical masks. Item 5, shadow. This is the knowledge you have of yourself, frequently incorrect. It's the hidden you, the things you're not going to show to others, the things you're not going to show to yourself also. It's about repression, things you don't want or don't like, and you repress them, you push them into the subconscious. It's things you are hiding. And that's the shadow, an archetype of Jung's. The ego, which was started by Sigmund Freud and adapted by Jung, it's the knowledge you have of yourself. It's what you let you know about yourself. It's your conscious side. It's not something you've slipped into your unconscious. It's your known identity. It's what you feel you are and what you are showing to people, even though you may be hiding a great deal of it. Number 7, item 7 of Jung's 12 archetypes is the collective unconscious. And this is really a gigantic concept in Freudian psychology. And it's you don't just have a consciousness about yourself. You have a collective unconsciousness, things that you do with others, but you may not know about them. They're unconscious items about your culture, your group, your family. So, generally things that are unknown, but ways that you behave. Travel to a different country, and you go, what in the world are they doing here? You know. The anima, this is the feminine side of males, is what Jung calls this anima, which generally it's a female term, but it's about men who have a feminine side. And all men do. For some, it's 1%, for some, it's 30%, etc. Animus, that's the masculine side of females. What does the female feel about power, for instance, about warfare, about being in charge, etc.? The 10th archetype of Jung's is the self. This is a total aspect that you have of yourself. Who am I? What do I see of me? And how do I unify it? How do I bring it all together? How do I become aware of it? And of course, we're unaware of most of what we are, according to Jung and Freud. Jung stated that this was the most important of all his archetypes, is who are you when you think about yourself? How do you make yourself into something similar, something unified? Who am I? And you've got some statements about yourself that you have developed. Uh, you might talk about those with other people and they go, what? They have a whole different image of you, possibly. 11, individuation. This is your feelings about your personhood, who you are as an individual. And that's where the name individuation comes from. So you're combining your conscious and unconscious sides. You let some things out. And finally, 12, synchronicity. This is a bringing together of the self. You now become wholeness. You now have lots of awareness. You know what happens to yourself. Who am I in the group? At any rate, you're bringing things together about yourself. You are synchronizing. And that's the end of Jung. So we're going to start a new lecture now. And the new lecture is going to be about sex researchers. And we're first going to talk about Alfred Kinsey, who worked in the 1950s, and then working later and working together, William Masters and Virginia Johnson, generally called Masters and Johnson, and the research that they did on sexuality. This is Alfred Kinsey, photo of him in midlife. We're going to look at his early life first. He was born on the 23rd of June in 1894 in Hoboken, New Jersey. So he's a United States person. And he died on the 25th of August, 1956, at the age of 62. His father was a college professor. Consequently, he made little money, had no health insurance. Health insurance generally wasn't provided by people until labor unions became much stronger in the 1960s and started getting benefits. So much of Kinsey's life was one where going to the doctor was something that cost you something. So consequently, Kinsey grew up on the poor side of things. Father was a college professor who made little money and had no health insurance. Childhood diseases of Alfred Kinsey. Now, this can be an important thing in your psychological development. A lot of childhood diseases. Children frequently got many of them. Rickets, typhoid fever, rheumatic fever, a couple of different fevers there, and not unusual in the late 1800s and early 1900s. In the late 1800s, yeah, and I used to have my class count off 1 through 10, and I'd say, okay, everybody raise your hands, and I'd say, okay, all the 1 through 5s, lower your hands. You're all dead by the age of 10. Half of all children died by the age of 10, up into the early 1900s. And then I'd say, okay, 6 through 9s, put your hands down. You're all dead by the age of 40. 10s, your odds of living to be 70 are pretty decent. So diseases were significant when Kinsey was a child and growing up. And there were losses of siblings, brothers and sisters. There were losses of friends. You were aware of children dying. What was happening to half of the population by the age of 10. Worst case was rickets that uh, Kinsey had. It's caused by a vitamin D deficiency, means you're not getting enough sunlight. That's where we can pick up vitamin D very easily. And during Kinsey's life, vitamin D wasn't yet added to milk. And of course, children drink lots of milk. Now, today, milk has several things added to it, including vitamin D. Consequently, we fare much better through childhood, and we don't get these diseases that cause a bowing of the legs, such as rickets. And it was a common disease if you were growing up, you know, into the 1930s even. Kinsey developed curvature of the spine in his childhood. He was not allowed to serve in World War I as a result because he had this uh, thoracic scoliosis, it's called. Here you can see the curvature of the spine. It often results in a hunchback. People we call hunchbacks have thoracic scoliosis. Kinsey had that. Rheumatic fever affects joints, skin, heart, brain. There's lots of stuff going on. Strep throat is common among children up to the and into the 1830s. There was no antibiotics until the late 1930s. And so you get rheumatic fever, strep throat comes with it. Can last a month, can last a month and a half. Typhoid fever, you get a rash. The fever is high. It's not a low grade fever, it's a high grade fever, and it comes with headaches. You have pains in your stomach. You develop intestinal ulcers. Organs enlarge with typhoid fever. And it is caused by a bacteria, not a vitamin deficiency, as when we talked about milk, for instance, and now having vitamin D in it. And it's caused by the Salmonella bacteria. Um, Once we realize that these little animals that we looked at through a microscope cause diseases, everybody started looking at different bacteria and relating them to a disease cause. We didn't get interested in vitamin deficiencies until that went away, like in the 1930s. Then we started taking a look at what's vitamin D, what's it do, etc. Typhoid fever, you get a white coating of the tongue, such as is illustrated here. There's whiteness in a major patch on each side of the tongue. Here's the Salmonella bacteria. You get a rash on the body, enlarged liver, enlarged spleen, the organs enlarge. You get ulcers in the intestines. And so this is quite a typhoid fever has lots of symptoms, lots of problems. Let's take a look at Alfred Kinsey and religion. His parents were super Christians. They could point their finger at a kid. So Kinsey grew up in a very strict environment. Lots of rules were laid down. You were told in no uncertain terms how to behave, what was proper and what wasn't. And it was just lots of directional concepts given to a child. Kinsey's education, his early education, was through the Young Men's Christian Association. And when he became an adult, and after he had attended college, he worked for the YMCA. Senior thesis for his bachelor's degree was on the interactions of young boys. And he was real interested in the YMCA. That's where he got his job. Consequently, his bachelor's degree senior year thesis was interactions of young boys. How do they behave with each other? And they aren't, the women aren't part of the group yet. That comes later. Same with women. They hang together in these earlier years. He was also in the Boy Scouts, Kinsey was. So YMCA and both Boy Scouts, uh, they were Christian organizations. So they had a religious philosophy behind them. And Kinsey was coming out of that strong, more right-wing, uh, uh, fundamentalist type of Christian background. In 1913, he was 19 years old, and he became an Eagle Scout. He got enough awards that he was declared an Eagle Scout. Favorite high school subjects, however, were science, especially biology, and he became a biologist. He also liked music, piano in particular, was very good at it, even considered and was provided with lots of support for having a concertizing career on the piano. Higher education. Father was not happy about biology. It had evolution in it. So his father demanded engineering. You go into engineering. Father taught at the Stevens Institute of Technology. Here's a picture of the one of the main buildings and the one of the main entries, and it was located in Hoboken, New Jersey. Tuition in 2025 is $65,606 per year. That is a gigantic amount of money for any in four-year college. 99% of all students who go there receive financial aid. Brings the price down by about a third, so that you still have to come up with $43,665 on average. Here, you can see out on a peninsula is the Stevens Institute of Technology. And here's here's the library. Here's a tall building here. Many tall buildings now today. It's really taken on. And there's sports, which you can see down here. There's a bigger image of the school that his father sent him to. Here's the Hoboken Sinatra Park and Cafe here. And this is all the campus. Gets up into the 50s. There's a 52nd building. So big place. Stevens Institute of Technology. Kinsey went there for 2 years. Remember, he was more interested in biology. Told his dad, I'm not staying there. Engineering isn't for me. He got accepted at Baldwin College in Brunswick, Maine, majored in biology and psychology at Baldwin College, with the main building and mall area pictured here. Father was very unhappy about this. Refused to attend his graduation. Psychology, biology. They talk about evolution in there. They talk about what's wrong with people, so on and so forth. For graduate work, Kinsey was accepted at Harvard University, an Ivy League school. Did graduate work in etymology. That's the study of insects. There's a graphic with a bunch of insects on it. So, from biology and psychology majors in his 4-year degree, he goes to etymology, insects, in his graduate degrees. His PhD thesis was on the gull wasp. There's several images of gull wasps pictured here, and they have different species also. Alfred Kinsey's career. First job, American Museum of Natural History. This is in Manhattan. I've spent a lot of time at this place. I used to go to Manhattan during the summers when I wasn't working. I once lived very near this place. I lived at 210 West 67th Street, which was maybe about 3 blocks from the American Museum of Natural History. Kinsey wrote articles while he worked there on the gull wasps. By the way, 210 West 67th Street was the home of Diane Keaton, a famous actress who recently died. I lived on the 6th floor there. And I got on the elevator one day and there's Diane Keaton alone. I said hello. She said hello back. She was carrying a card with her and looked down at the card again so she wouldn't have to be talking to people. Then we walk out together, but I stop at the doorman and I say, geez, it's Diane Keaton. He said, yeah. She lives on the 12th floor, the entire 12th floor. Well, Kinsey, he wrote a high school biology textbook that was widely used, and it had references in it to evolution. A New Introduction to Biology by Alfred C. Kinsey. There was lots of backlash, especially from the right wing and religious groups, about the fact that there was evolution mentioned in this biology book. Most high school biology textbooks, actually all of them, make no reference to evolution, nor do the teachers. During the years that I taught in high school, back 69 to 83, I asked the biology teachers, do you teach evolution? Absolutely not. I don't even mention it. I mean, this is during our lifetimes. To this day, it's a subject that is avoided unless you want trouble. American Museum of Natural History has a collection of 18 million insects. 5 million of them are gull wasps. All of them were donated by Kinsey to this institution, the American Museum of Natural History. It's hard to see. I don't know. I could have blown it up. Here's a horse out front, up on a stand. And sitting on the horse, Theodore Roosevelt, who contributed a tremendous amount of animals that he had killed and then had stuffed and contributed to the American Museum of Natural History. And Theodore Roosevelt reminds me to tell you that we will be back to the presidents next quarter. Please get your friends to sign up. American Museum of Natural History. A gull wasp. Bet you were thinking of it as something the size of your thumb. It isn't. See how tiny it is on a fingertip? Kinsey's career, his next job was at the University of Indiana in Bloomington, Indiana. And he got a job teaching there. And he taught etymology, which is insects. Kinsey decided he wanted to teach a class on insect sex and had literally hundreds of people sign up for it, including married couples. Men at the university brought their wives. Wives brought their husbands, although this wasn't a period of time when most of the population of colleges was women. Today it's about 60% women, but it was much lower than that in Kinsey's day. So all of a sudden you go, boy, there's a lot of interest in sex, isn't there? Class members said, hey, we want you talking about human sexuality, not just this insect stuff. And that changed his direction, both in terms of research and in terms of the classes he was going to be teaching. Changed his educational direction for the rest of his life. He started another place called the Kinsey Institute, now named for him. 1947, he founded the Kinsey Institute for Research in Sex, Gender, and Reproduction. And here's their logo, Kinsey Institute. Registered trademark. So you can see there. His most famous two books, Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, 1948, Sexual Behavior in the Human Female, 1953. And here's a copy of that book. And you can see he wrote it with two other people, Alfred C. Kinsey, Wardle B. Pomeroy, and Clyde E. Martin. The two copies, human sex in men, human sex in women, sold 750,000 copies. This is phenomenal, a gigantic amount of sales. 1950 census, the United States had 151 million people, and these books sold 750,000 copies. Today, we got about 341 million in the United States, so the population has more than doubled. Kinsey was amazed at the large sales because it was a science book. People told him this won't sell much, science books don't. But both books made the bestseller list in the United States. Largest selling book since Gone with the Wind in the 1930s, whole decade earlier, decade and a half earlier, actually. There's a picture of the book. Also, became a gigantic movie, a movie that's still respected today, as is the book by Margaret Mitchell. The male book had three authors. Now, the female book adds another guy here, Paul H. Gebert. I had a psychology class from a Professor Burris at the University of Minnesota. And he bragged about, I got my PhD under Wardell Pomeroy, who's pictured here, who was one of the authors with Kinsey of these sex books. And they all had pipes in those days. The male book was well received, very interesting. People thought, well, that's great, that's okay. The book on females, tremendous controversy, talking about females enjoying sex. They're supposed to be non-adventurous, nice people. And this really hit the newsways with great shock. Book on females came out in 1953. It was the height of the McCarthy era, finding communists. All these guys got accused of being communist. These are communist writings that you've done. You don't talk like that about women, etc. Next thing we're going to talk about is the Kinsey reports. Kinsey credits. He was the first qualified person to do human sexual research. And this really began the liberation of female sexuality in the 1950s. Kinsey credits again, exploded the lie that women are not interested in sex. He discussed female orgasms. He developed a sexual orientation scale, 1 through 6 and X. Heterosexual only, this is number 1. Then you get down here into 3.5. You start picking up bisexual individuals. And then gay or lesbian only, but the term that was used in Kinsey's day was homosexual only, was on the opposite end of the spectrum. Number 6. X was no sexual context, not interested. Non-participants. Here's a Kinsey report findings. And, again, we use the terms gay and lesbian now, but this is findings from the 1950s, and I'll read it. 10% of males sampled were predominantly homosexual between the ages of 16 and 55. 2 to 6% of females aged 20 to 35 were more or less exclusively homosexual in experience and response. Research controversies. 6 critiques that were made by other professional people about Kinsey's work. Kinsey wanted his interviewers to be knowledgeable about what they were doing. So get engaged in a variety of activities on your own. Well, this makes them biased according to the critiques of Kinsey. Unnecessary that they were involved because they had huge samples. I mean, a sample of like 12 to 1,500 people in a piece of research today is enough to expand that to the entire population. But Kinsey now, with a population that's like under 40% of what we have today, used 5,300 women and 6,000 men in these research programs that he did. Critique number 2 from his critics, there's a volunteer bias because the participants, or at least most of the participants, the vast majority of participants were volunteers. They weren't you just randomly picking people out of the population to be tested or interviewed. So they weren't randomly selected. They were volunteers. Hey, we're doing some sex research. Want to talk to us? Item 3, a biological study, not a psychological study. So why are you talking about this as a psychological thing? Sounds biological to the critics. Item 4, the subject of sex was taboo. This is the 1940s and 50s. You don't even talk about such a thing. Well, a lot of people did privately, secretly, but generally, I mean, you didn't talk about such things in public. People were not willing to discuss sex. Item 5, some sex acts that were discussed in the Kinsey books were illegal at the time. So there were sexual practices in there that were illegal, in particular same-sex items, but other critics saw certain acts of sex as very irregular, and they were illegal in many states. Number 6, Kinsey's own sexual behavior may have biased the work. He was bisexual and very experimental. Despite all that, the research is considered today to be very pioneering, of great importance. Marital and more findings. Sexual frequency per week in the late teens, 2.8 times a week. When you're in your 20s, 2.2 times a week. When you reach your 40s, it's about once a week. Extramarital experiences, females to age 40, 26%, 1/4 reported extramarital experiences. Males, one same-sex experience, 37% of males reported this. Exclusively of same-sex experiences, 10% of males reported themselves as being exclusively same-sex. Females, exclusively same-sex, 4% reported same-sex only. 21st century findings now, a lot of this research has been repeated. 8 million participants, 3.5% of adults reported themselves as being gay, lesbian, or bisexual. So that's a smaller number than was reported in the Kinsey research. Masturbation, 92% of all men reported masturbating, 62% of all women did. Attitudes changed by the 1960s. You could talk about sex. It was more acceptable, became a public item. Many say this was due to the invention of and distribution of the birth control pill in 1961. People started talking about, what, would you take that? Or what, you are taking it. Oh, how is it? And all that's people. And that got people talking more deeply about sexualness. Sexual adventureness, far greater diversity than was expected. The theory, their predictions for what these numbers would be were far higher than what they were, far lower than what they thought they'd be. Males and females having oral sex, 49% reported that. Males having anal sex, 11% reported it. Females sleeping naked, 50% said that they did. Males with extramarital affairs, 50%. Males that visited prostitutes were at 69%. And that was far more available then. Premarital sex, men, this is men based on economic income. Low income men, 98% reported premarital sex. High income men reported 67%. Women overall, 50% reported premarital sex. 50-50. That ends Kinsey's research and work. Next, we're going to talk about William Masters and Virginia Johnson. Introduction. This is a picture of the two, of Masters and Johnson. Masters is the man, Johnson the woman. They were sex researchers beginning in the 1950s and going through the 1970s. They were publishing information, and they became as famous as Alfred Kinsey. 3 statements. They developed 4 stages of sexual response: excitement, plateau, organism, and resolution. And they discuss them in the book that's pictured here titled Human Sexual Response by William H. Masters, who was a medical doctor, and Virginia E. Johnson. LGBTQ community activities are not a mental illness. These lesbian, gay, bisexual, etc., were considered mental illnesses and defined as such by many state laws. American Psychiatric Association considered gay and lesbian and bisexual people as mentally ill up to 1973 when they changed their reports about LGBTQ community. It's transgender and queer is the TQ meanings. Masturbation does not lead to insanity. They discuss that in this book, Sex and Human Loving, by Masters and Johnson. And they've added a Mr. Kolodny as the author of this book on masturbation. The notion that masturbation caused illness stems from Samuel Auguste Tissot, who lived from 1728 to 1797. He was a Swiss person and a medical doctor. And he said masturbation is what leads to acne, death, epilepsy, insanity, lethargy, medical capacity loss, weakness, and weight loss. So there were large problems associated by this man with masturbation that lasted well into the last century. Masters and Johnson research findings: women are capable of achieving multiple orgasms, some even after the final stage of resolution. Resolution was that final stage defined by Masters and Johnson. And there are some cultures where women report 5 orgasms during sex, other cultures where they go, it's happened 3 times in my life. Women are sexually responsive as men are. Women can have 5 to 6 orgasms in a few minutes. Men need an hour between each. Masturbation is common. Masters and Johnson confirmed Kinsey's results. 92% of all men, 62% of all women report masturbation. Sexual peak, Kinsey, males sexually peak in the late teens, females in the 30s. So Masters and Johnson verify this. Sexual dysfunction had been long-term therapy previous to this, but Masters and Johnson developed a method for dealing with sexual dysfunction. 80% positive results within a 2-week period. A couple of sessions, and you've got the person taken care of. Today, there's pills that people can take for sexual dysfunction. Sexual disability is based on age. Found people in their 70s were generally capable, but many were not. So it's a general thing, more than 50%. And that is the end of the Masters and Johnson work. Now I need to go to my next set of lectures. Let me get them open and set up, and it's on Erik Erikson. There we go. Whoops. Now play. Okay, I assume you can all see this. And we'll do about 15 minutes on Erik Erikson and finish him up next week. Life and death first. His name was Eric Salomonson Hamburger Erickson. Full name. I'll give you a lot more on that later, why he's got all those names. Born in Frankfurt, Germany, here it is, in the southern third of Germany, and kind of pushing down toward the southwest corner. He died in Harwich, Massachusetts, so he immigrated to the United States. This is the, uh, whoops, this is the Atlantic Ocean down here. This is Cape Cod up here. Here's Harwich, so that's where he lived. He lived on the Atlantic Ocean side of Cape Cod. If you're fond of sand dunes and salty air, quaint little villages here and there, you'll be sure to fall in love with old Cape Cod. Patty Page, one of her big hits, and she had a house on Cape Cod. Uh, Unfortunately, though, for Erickson, he was on the Atlantic Ocean side of Cape Cod. He lived from 1902 to 1994. He died when he was 91 years and 11 months of age. Here's a picture of him as an older person. His childhood. His mother was a Danish Jew, and she lived in Copenhagen. Show you a map of that later in the next slide. She married a German, and the husband was a stockbroker, but they separated and got divorced. And that's about all that Erickson knew about his father. He was non-Jewish Dane. However, Jews trace their ancestry through the female line. So technically, Erickson could be considered by Jewish requirements to be a Jew. Here's Copenhagen, Denmark over here. Here's the main peninsula of Denmark. Then there are islands. And you can see here's a very large island. Copenhagen is actually in the far east of Denmark, very, very close here to Norway. And this border down here is with Germany. So it's a huge spot like that. And oh, yeah, my grandparents came from this area. My grandfather lived outside of Hjoring and close enough to the ocean that they did a lot of fishing. And my grandmother lived a little south of there in something wasn't even big enough to be called a village. It was called Bro Station. And that's named for the railroad station that was built near a large group of farming people. Months after the separation of Jung's parents, his mother was pregnant with him. So this looks like the guy that his mother was married to is not his father. She moved to Frankfurt, Germany. There she could tell people, excuse me, well, my husband died, or something like that. Not that, hey, I'm unmarried and pregnant. She named him after her ex-husband, even though he was not the father. So his birth name was Eric Salomonson. And she moved then to Karlsruhe, Germany, down here, very much in the very far southeast of Germany. As with all infants, he needed a doctor. And his mom started dating the doctor that she would take him to, and they ended up getting married. And they had Eric's name changed then to Eric Hamburger, who was the name, that was the last name of the doctor, medical doctor, who uh, Erickson's mother married. His mother and stepfather told him that Theodore Hamburger, his the medical doctor, who they said, he's your dad, your natural father, your biological father. So he thought he was growing up and being raised by his biological father. Years later, they told him the truth. But we don't know who your father is. Your mother was married before, but got pregnant after the divorce, etc. Eric was angry about this for the rest of his life. He said, never got over it. This deception led to ideas of his that contributed to his philosophy of psychology. He had the concept of identity. Well, who am I now? That guy's not my dad. Identity crisis and identity confusion. All of these things came upon him. Consequently, he starts thinking this is important in the formation of personality and etc. Claims his identity was established when he reached adulthood, not in childhood, as Freud has always argued. He chose a name for himself. In 1936, age 34, he had his name changed, and he is now becomes Eric Erickson. He said, who wants to be called a hamburger? Children all agreed their names were changed also, the children that he had. He had come to the United States with the name of Hamburger, and they hated that. And again, because sounds like hamburger in the U.S., and they were being made fun of. Erickson was blonde and blue-eyed. Doesn't sound Jewish. Sounds Scandinavian. This made him questionable in the Jewish community. He was taking part in Jewish activities, and they went, "You can't be one of us. You got blonde hair, and you got blue eyes." So, as a Jew, he received a lot of ridicule, especially from Gentiles who said, "You can't possibly be a Jew," and even from many Jews. Blonde and blue-eyed, Jew or Gentile. So big identity crisis on the religious front, on the ethnicity front, Scandinavian or Jewish or German, etc. Education. He went to high school, which in Germany is called the gymnasium, and he studied art and he studied languages. His medical doctor stepfather wanted him to go into medicine. But he went to art school instead, and he had never been a great student, dropped out of the art school after 1 year. He then traveled around Europe for a while, searched for a place that was friendly to artists because he could still draw very well. Thought he could make a living maybe, even though he didn't graduate from an art school. He went back to Germany and got a job teaching art, hired by a wealthy family, and he tutored their children, and it expanded beyond the arts. Other families, wealthy families, heard about him, and they started hiring him also to tutor their children. Some of these families in Vienna, Austria, had heard about him, and they hired him and got him to move there. So over here in Vienna on the far east side of Austria, he went and was tutoring wealthy family children in that area. A woman who was visiting a family where he worked uh, hired him and was very impressed with how much he enjoyed the job. That woman that had hired him was Anna Freud, daughter of Sigmund Freud, and a psychologist in her own right. So he was tutoring Sigmund Freud's grandchildren and Anna Freud's children. This is Anna Freud, the photo, lived from 1895 to 1982. Encouraged him to attend the Vienna Psychoanalytic School, which he did. He received a diploma there. His major was in Montessori techniques. Andersen had found his life's work now, child psychology, pretty vital branch in the fields of psychology. Religion. Andersen married in 1930 at age 28. Joan Serson. He met her in Vienna, where he was tutoring and teaching, and she was from Canada, and she was not Jewish. So, as a result of the marriage, Andersen said, "I'm now a Christian." Here's Andersen in the 1930s over here, age 28. This is a wedding photo. Here he is with his two sons, his daughter. This is his wife and him later in life, and the children are pretty much adults. Nazis. Hitler came to power in 1933. Andersen was worried about Austria following in the footsteps of and becoming a Nazi nation. Now, Andersen was a convert to Christianity. Lots of Jews said, "Okay, I'm a Christian now," thinking they could escape the Holocaust, but they didn't. They went, "That's fake stuff," the Nazis did. So even though he was a convert, he was in danger. Uh, Jews were only able to save their lives by getting out of Europe or countries that Germany controlled. Andersen's, they had the two sons at the time. They decide to move out of Austria. They go to Denmark and apply for citizenship, but it's denied because in Denmark you had to be residents for a certain period of time, and they didn't match that proposal. And the Germans had not invaded Denmark yet, so it was a place that welcomed Jews, but not for citizenship. Uh, Bornholm is this island way over here. It's a part of Denmark, has a population of 39,500. Sorrel Island, Zealand is the name of the island. Uh, but this is, let me see here. Whoops. This area, this town of Sorrel, 7 of my wife's 8 great grandparents were Danish from this area here, from this city. So no luck in Denmark. So they go off to the United States. There's no such residency requirement in the United States at the time. Andersen acted very early among people with Jewish backgrounds in getting out of Germany. So he was lucky. Had not got, the ability to migrate out had not gotten closed down yet. And we're going to talk about his jobs. I'm wondering if, do we have any questions or should I continue?
We have some questions.
Okay, let me quit this. There we go.
So let's look.
Yeah.
Oh, and Carmi, this is, yep, thank you. So, okay, we're gonna go back to Kinsey for these
Okay.
questions. Um, in terms of the archetypes, um, they seem to us now to be very much male, female stereotypes.
Mm.
Um, and is they're just kind of like going, aren't they just pretty much stereotypes versus an actual archetype? Because it's like it's something that's kind of thrust upon someone versus necessarily being.
Mm. So the questionnaire is basically saying stereotypes are something low down. And of course, this, you talk to people and they'll tell you that this is psychological research. It counts for something. Uh, you can certainly make that comparison and say it's worthless as a result. Lots of people have done that. And there's been lots of, I voiced a lot of the criticism of
Right.
that research. And that certainly could be another that could be another negativity aimed at the research. At the same time, I could say they're the same thing.
True. And it's also, if you think about it, why do they persist?
Yeah,
Um, where, why do certain people try and keep people in these archetypes and stereotypes when they might not be, factual? So it's kind of a thing of, as a society, why do they persist? Um, might be a better question.
yeah. Well, and the another question is, are there major differences between males and females that aren't biological? I mean, are we the same psychologically, culturally, uh,
Mhm.
or are there differences even within cultures, ethnicities, etc., between males and females?
So, well, it's kind of like how you said males look at the bits and females look at the overall picture.
Yeah,
I've heard it described as women are spaghetti and men are waffles. Um, whereas like women can see all the different strands and men are in a box. Like a waffle has the little grids and they're in one box at a time. Um, which
sure.
is an interesting comparison. And I think is that neurological or is that something that their brains are just able to handle better? I don't know. It's an
Yeah.
interesting,
It's a nature versus nurture argument to some extent, also.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the difference between self and individuation?
Hmm. Got me.
Because,
Um, Individuation, I think, is where you really start seeing yourself as part of a group. But who am I in the group? Self is really your concept of yourself without that outside influence. I think that's probably the major difference is self is me, individuation is me in the group.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, question. If Kinsey grew up poor, how did he afford all of these expensive schools?
He was in Europe. They're free.
For Kinsey?
Sure.
Okay, well, actually, like the first one that he went to, that his dad sent him to, that um the Institute of Technology, and looked it up.
Oh, no, I'm just
Let's see. Oh, the
yeah. He's not European.
Stevens Institute of Technology.
Yeah.
the reason he could afford to go there for that first year was his dad taught there.
Yeah,
I think.
that could help. But also, schools were far less expensive in his day than they are today. They were in my day. My
Yeah.
dad worked at the post office. He worked in the uh, personnel department and had 6 kids. He could afford to send me to college and pay for it.
hmm I think it also helps.
And
Kinsey sounds like he was very much a high level student compared to Erickson. So,
yeah, yes.
so if he could definitely earn scholarships, is what it's sounding like from
Yeah.
um, just how intellectual he was.
But college generally was far more affordable. As a matter of fact, as it got very expensive, that's why student loans came about.
Oh yeah, I didn't have student loans in my day even, so yeah, things have ballooned quite a bit. When was evolution routinely taught in high schools?
Never.
So,
Hasn't been.
yeah, well, it's become more acceptable, but then there's been pushback. Um,
All you need is 10 people showing up at a school board meeting and yelling and screaming about their teaching evolution. I taught psychology for 15 years, and we would have parents come in occasionally for meetings, and they'd meet in a large group. And one woman stood up and said, "Tell us about this sleep and dreams stuff, remembering dreams my daughters told me about." So I said, "Well, you keep a pencil and paper by your bedside. When you wake up, don't move. Stop, see if you can remember a dream and write it down." Some woman stands up and says, "That's automatic writing. Automatic writing is of the devil." So even teaching about writing down dreams and the methodology that's used, in the early 1980s, this was seen by one particular person as automatic writing. Of course, my question is, what do you call writing the Bible when people say everything I wrote was God was guiding my hand? That sounds like automatic writing also. Anyway, she gets together in her church of 300, and 100 of them come to the next school board meeting. And this is what happens with evolution. Even
okay.
though it might, yeah,
Somebody talks about it's like I was taught evolution in the early 70s in high school. And part of that would be a Supreme Court decision in 68 ruling that overturned bans on teaching it. Um,
yeah,
so it became more common, always having pushback depending on where you live, I
yeah.
would say, in terms of that. Um, what was I going to say? Oh, in terms of the viewpoint of how much I mean, I think you see with the Kinsey and Masters and Johnson in terms of the studies that they did, and you get this also with better understanding of neurological imbalances that cause different things. You see a lot of psychology research as being things that overturn um, views that people were insane or that people were had a mental illness when they were things that had nothing to do with that. Or if that makes sense. I'm phrasing it poorly, I feel like, but
Well,
um
again, it was some individual's idea about what these things were, and this is different than me, therefore something's wrong with it, and let's pass some laws and
or I think of what people used to be institutionalized for there would be
sure.
um more of a thing, how people would get institutionalized for things that we see now is it's like that's not um not something that is an institutionalizable offense. And it's just not understanding society, not understanding or not or demonizing things that they didn't understand. So,
Yeah, one thing, it's just can be as simple as it's different from me,
right.
or something's wrong with it.
It's like,
Or it's different from 97% of the society, therefore something's wrong with it.
right. It's fearing the unknown per se. And that's a lot of what the research is trying to do is to make the unknown known, I guess you could say. So, well, we're at 157. Last
Please,
call for questions.
please register for Ulysses Grant next quarter.
Yeah, that'll be good. Let's see some of the stuff you're going to cover. I have that here in case people are wondering.
Oh,
You're going to be looking into his performance in war, including the battles of Fort McHenry, Fort Donelson, Shiloh, Iuka, and Vicksburg, and also looking at his political beliefs, including support for women's and Jewish rights. So, also his early life and military career through his presidency and the tour around the world in his late life. So, lots of interesting things to be looking at there. Um, so, feel free to sign up for that, people. Like I said, first three sessions are currently up on YouTube and the library website. Should have by tomorrow, if not Friday, um, the fourth session up. And then, oh, somebody's saying I was taught evolution in junior high in Mankato in the late 60s, probably around that Supreme Court decision time, I'm gonna guess.
yeah.
That came into being taught. So, but yeah, it's
Good.
we see a lot of change, especially the 60s and 70s and 80s, what's being taught and what's not being taught. So, um, yeah, lots of changes during that time with people being more open to that research. So,
Interesting to hear that. Good.
any last thoughts, JB?
No,
Well, okay, everyone. It's going on 2 o'clock. Have a good day. Stay from the snow or have a cup of hot cocoa or tea. Uh, and we will see you back here next Wednesday at 12:30. Okay, have a good day, everyone.
thank you.